Hey, what's up, guys? It's Dino Talk Sports, and welcome to Mock Draft 2.0 with trades. Now, I know my first mock draft came out about 10 days ago. That's not a lot of time in between these mock drafts, and normally there would be more time. However, the NFL Combine just ended. It happened this last weekend, and it completely changed the draft landscape. It increased the stock for some players and decreased the stock for others, as we'll see shortly. But let's jump right into this, starting with the first overall pick, which got traded in the first mock draft. And guess what? It's going to get traded yet again. I do think the Titans are going to end up trading this first overall pick because of what we found out at the Combine. We found out that teams think Cam Ward is QB1 by a mile. They don't think Shedeur Sanders is relatively close, meaning Cam Ward is now the prize of this draft. He is looked at a lot more highly than I thought he would be. I personally have a second to third round grade on him, but most teams see him as hey, he could be our signal caller of the future. Now, if the Titans think that, they'll stick and pick him. However, the Titans have talked about getting a generational player in this draft. I don't think they think that of Cam Ward. Someone I do think would sell a lot to move up to get Cam Ward. I'm not entirely sure what the trade compensation would be, but the New York Giants moving up to one seems likely, considering they missed out on the Matthew Stafford trade. I think they wanted Stafford to be their guy. They could stick at 3 and pick a guy like Travis Hunter, possibly. However, that's not going to be the case now, and this team is in dire need, and I mean dire need, of finding a quarterback of the future in Cam Ward, or just in anybody. And it seems the Giants guy could be Cam Ward. So I don't know what, again, the draft compensation would be. I guess another first will throw into next year's third. You got to remember, even though he's moving up two spots, it's still the first overall pick. They're going to get a good amount for it. Let's throw in a fourth this year and a fifth, something like that. Let's force this trade. Oh, I don't even have to force it. Trade will likely be accepted. Boom. Trade not accepted. It said likely. Whatever. I'm forcing the trade anyway. The Giants move up to the first overall pick. They go ahead and select Cam Ward. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns. And something else we also found out at the draft was the Browns do want to get a quarterback, and the guy they want to get seems to be Cam Ward. But even though they do need a quarterback, they acknowledge it. They're not going to reach for somebody, aka Shedeur Sanders. I think they're going to stick and pick the best player available, and the guy who seems to be the top player on their board is Travis Hunter. Now, the interesting thing about Travis Hunter going to the Browns is that they view him primarily as a wide receiver. And I completely agree with that. If you follow my takes, if you follow me in general, you know I think very highly of Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. I think he's the best receiver in this draft. I think he can be one of the best receivers in football with his skill set, with his hands, the way he can make somebody miss in a phone booth. He is just a dynamic weapon that I think needs the ball in his hands constantly. And I think Kevin Stefanski will find very creative ways to get him the ball. Now, who's going to get him the ball? I don't know. Hopefully not Deshaun Watson again. I'd imagine maybe they sign to Sam Darnold. Maybe they go try and get Kirk Cousins. But either way, if they can just get some decent quarterback play with this receiving room, Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, I think this offense could start humming, especially if they find a running back to either complement Chubb or just replace Chubb completely. Then we get to the Titans. And, I mean, this is just fantastic for them. They trade back, get an extra first round pick, as well as other picks in general in the process, and you still get the guy you probably would have chosen at 1 anyway in Abdul Carter. He's who I think is the best player in this entire draft. He was the best edge rusher in football his first year playing edge rusher. Just an athletic specimen, a freak. I know he's injured right now. I don't think that'll stop this team that desperately needs some edge rush help, especially after saying, hey, Harold Landry, you can go find a trade if you'd like. Not that I thought Harold Landry was much good anyway, but now their edge depth is just really bad. They need an edge rusher. Abdul Carter is their guy. Then we get to the Patriots, and I'm excited for this one because we're going to see our first combine riser of the video, a true riser. They need offensive line, desperately. I don't think it's going to be Campbell, Simmons, Banks, no. The kid out of Missouri, Armand Membou, have a day, will you? Measures in at 6'4", 332 pounds, runs a 4.9 140-yard dash, great in the agility drills, great vertical, great broad jump for his size, very much a Tristan Wirfs-esque performance from him. And an important part, he measured in with 33-inch arms. Now, that's not the 34-inch threshold that you normally like to see for tackle, but it's also playable at tackle. And that's the fun part about Membou, is he's a versatile offensive lineman. He can play tackle for the Patriots if he needs to. He can play guard for the Patriots if he needs to. They need literally every position along the offensive line. So Membou having that versatility to play wherever the Patriots need him to, and having that athleticism to be, and the technique. The film backs it up. I had Membou going as the 12th overall pick. This performance is just skyrocketing him to the top of the board for a lot of people. He can be a franchise cornerstone. I truly believe that with his athleticism, with his tape, with his technique, he can be the guy that the Patriots are looking for. He can be the guy that'll be protecting Drake May for the foreseeable future, whether it's on his blind spot or in the interior. Going forward now, to the Jags, I don't think they'll overthink this pick. It's going to be Mason Graham. Now, Mason Graham didn't exactly impress at the Combine. He measured in with 32-inch arms. We knew he had short arms, though. But the other part was he measured in about 15 pounds underweight. Some players will cut weight before the Combine to run faster times, but I don't think he ran. So I don't think it mattered all too much. But regardless, the tape says he's by far the best defensive tackle in this class. And, I mean, the Jags just need help on defense everywhere. But the defensive interior specifically, he's going to come bringing this talent alongside Josh Hines-Allen, alongside Trayvon Walker. It should make this pass rush much more formidable. They don't overthink this one. They're going to go with one of the top defensive line prospects in this draft. Then we get to the Raiders, right? And what we found out at the NFL draft was that teams think much less of Shedeur Sanders than the national media does. You know, many of the national media had him going as potentially the first overall pick, potentially the second, third to the Giants, you know. I was very close to saying Shedeur Sanders is going to fall. How far? Possibly out of the first round. And I think there is still a very, very high chance that if the Raiders, take it like this, if the Raiders don't pick Shedeur, I'm not sure Shedeur Sanders is a first round pick. But it's hard for me to imagine that the Raiders don't take Shedeur Sanders because of Sanders, for one, connection to Brady. They've known each other for quite some time. They have a relationship. Brady's going to have a say in who this team drafts going forward. But the other thing is they just need a quarterback. They missed out on the Matthew Stafford trade. They didn't get to get him. The Rams re-signed him. Not that he was truly ever really available, but that was the guy that the Raiders wanted. And are they going to sign Darnold? Maybe a Russell Wilson, get him back with Pete Carroll? No, I think they are going to draft the quarterback, if he's here, in Shedeur Sanders. Now, is that great? I don't think so. I think Shedeur, again, is clearly the QB2. I think he's closer to a third-round pick than he is a first-round pick. But there is a steep, and I mean steep, drop-off of quarterbacks after Sanders, so the Raiders went and snagged one before it gets really bad. Then we get to the Jets. We'll kind of hurry through this one because I made this. If we make picks that were in the mock draft 1.0, I won't go too far into it because you can go back and watch that. But Will Johnson is the pick here. Will Johnson is the pick here. And it just makes sense from a scheme perspective. This is Aaron Glenn is defense coordinator who likes to run a lot of zero blitz, likes to send a lot of pressure, leave his corners on islands. And if you're looking at Sauce Gardner on the outside, Will Johnson on the other side, who I think is one of the very best players in this draft and by far the best corner in this draft. And then you got Mykel Carter in the slot. That is a very good and very, very fun secondary to run in this scheme. I think this Jets defense could be deadly with him right there. Then we get to the Panthers. And the Panthers are an interesting one. Panthers are indeed, I got to adjust my seat real quick. The Panthers are indeed an interesting pick here because for a long time, I said the Panthers have to go defensive line with this pick because, I mean, their defensive line talent just isn't very good. And it's still not good. I still stand by that. But when you look at some of the defensive linemen here, I think there's a lot of project-esque players, specifically as on the edge, which is what this team really needs. So I don't know if they want to take a project guy. I think this team needs an infusion of talent right now and players that can play. And a player that can play is Jahdae Barron, the corner out of Texas. This team also has a very, very big secondary issue. Outside of J.C. Horn, the secondary stinks. Jahdae Barron fixes that immediately. Whether he plays outside corner, I think he has the measurables and the athleticism to play outside corner, or he plays nickel, where I think his better role is suited. And that's not a bad thing. Nickel corners are so underrated and so important in today's league. Jahdae Barron starts and plays and is productive immediately. So I think Ejiro Evero's like, I'm sick of drafting guys for development. Give me a good player right now so I can try and fix this defense next season. That's what they do with Jahdae Barron. Then we get to the Saints. And this is always a tough pick for me. This is always a tough pick for me because I don't know what this team's direction is with Kellen Moore, But I always tend to think he's an offensive-minded head coach. I think his first pick will be leaned toward the offense, and the one that makes sense to me is the wide receiver out of Arizona, Tetairoa McMillan. Now, you might say they have Chris Olave. They have some weapons, Rashid Shaheed. Why would they take a guy like Tetairoa McMillan? Well, because I don't think they have enough weapons, for one. And for two, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed aren't very big receivers. I think getting a big possession, good route-running wide receiver in this room would do wonderful things for this offense going forward. Now, it's just a matter of, is Spencer Rattler the guy, or maybe they draft someone later in this draft or sign somebody in free agency. But I do really like the fit of Tet with the Saints. I think I made this. No, I didn't make this pick last time. I think I actually had him falling, but not this time. Then we get to the Bears. This is where the Will Campbell drop stops. Now, Will Campbell did not have a bad combine. Will Campbell had an excellent combine for the most part. If we're talking from an athleticism perspective, it was on par with Armand Membou. It was fantastic. The issue is the arm length with Campbell. Measured in with 32-inch arms. That's not going to cut it at tackle the next level. He will not be playing tackle the next level. He just can't. At least I don't think so. Not with that arm length. We haven't seen it work out for the most part. But I still think he can be a fantastic guard. A fantastic guard. And that is exactly what this Bears team needs. I think they can make do with Braxton Jones and try to keep developing him at left tackle. So that means it's really just the interior you got to worry about. And Campbell comes in and fixes it. Not fixes it in general, but helps it, I should say, immediately. Just go protect Caleb Williams. Make sure he doesn't get sacked the most in the league again. This is just, you need to happen. It needs to happen. Draft an offensive lineman for the God's sake, Bears. Don't draft Ashton Jeanty. Then we get to the 49ers. And this was an interesting one for me because this was also a team where I was like, you need to draft an offensive lineman. You don't get a luxury pick like this often with that caliber of roster, with that caliber of coach. Go make the most of it. And I still think they're going to do that. But I also think they're not going to be in position to draft an edge rusher like Mykel Williams again. Now you might be saying, why Mykel over an offensive lineman? Well, Robert Saleh is back in town. And Mykel Williams fits his mold of pass rusher defensive lineman to a T. Big, physical, long, athletic, a guy he can develop. And I think he developed really well in the system with that coaching, with a guy like Nick Bosa across from him. I love this play for them for the future of the 49ers. Then we get to the Cowboys. This is also a team that I think desperately needs to go offensive line. There's going to be clamoring for Ashton Jeanty, and for good reason. He's a great player. But when you have a player like Zach Martin retire, you need to have something to plug in the hole. And to me, that guy's going to be Kelvin Banks. Now, I know he's listed as a tackle, and I still think he can play tackle the next level, absolutely. Which he might. Maybe Terrence Steele sucks, and they have to put him there. But I think he can slot in and start day one at right guard. He's a fantastic run blocker off the gate, and it's really just his pass protection that needs developing. But from the guard spot, that's not as important. He's a mauler in the run game, and with Tyler Smith across from him, you've got Tyler Guyton hopefully developing. This should, whoever's back there running back, probably a running back they'll draft later in this draft, this should really help this Dallas Cowboys run game going forward. Then we get to the Dolphins. And the Dolphins have some needs. Specifically, I think, at interior offensive line. But I don't know if there's an interior offensive lineman I'd take this high. Defensive tackle and safety. And while you could easily get a fantastic player here, I also think they could get that fantastic player later down the board, and they know it. Somebody who's desperate for the edge talent and edge help that is on the board is the Arizona Cardinals. And I did the trade compensation for the first overall pick, but I'm not really going to talk about trade compensation here because I'm not sure how much this would be. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure. You can make that up in your mind. Maybe I'll put it at the end of the video if I can think of it, but we're going to force the trade for now. Imagine they trade up a pick in this draft and maybe a pick in next year's draft. Force the trade. Boom. Cardinals come up. They're going to take another absolute combine riser in Shedeur Stewart. He had again, the comps were, at least athleticism-wise, profile-wise, from the combine, were Myles Garrett. You know what I mean? Near the exact same size, near the exact same 40 time and vertical jumps and just jumps in general. The only difference is the production in college. Now, it's a really, really big difference. Shedeur Stewart had 4.5 sacks in college. Myles Garrett had 32.5 sacks in college. Like, very, very different caliber of prospects, right? Shedeur Stewart comes out of the box as an A-plus run defender off the gate, which the Arizona Cardinals need. However, he needs to develop as a pass rusher. But I don't think the Cardinals will care. I think they'll bet on development. We got to remember, Gannon played coached for the Eagles. He might have that same mindset of take players you can develop for the future down the road. I think Shedeur Stewart's the pick here. Then we get to the Colts. I'm not going to stay on this one too long. Everybody and their mom is making this pick, and for good reason. Tyler Warren. He's not my top tight end in this draft. I think it's Colston Loveland, but remember, this is a predictive mock draft, and Tyler Warren is still a fantastic player. He fits the scheme well. I think Shane Steichen will do a great job of utilizing his talents as a do-it-all, like Army knife kind of player. Can line up out wide in the slot, from in line. He can throw the ball. He did it in college. I think this is going to be Anthony Richardson's best friend if he's drafted there. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons. And we're going to pick a player that the draft community seems to be higher on than me. And that guy is Jalon Walker. Now remember, as I've stated multiple times, this is a predictive mock draft. This isn't what I would do. Jalon Walker is going top 10 on a lot of boards. I can't do that. I don't think he's worthy of that. In fact, I don't even think he's the best linebacker on the board. I think Jihaad Campbell is. But there's just something that people seem to like about Jalon Walker, and the NFL seems to like him as well. And there's something there. He's really athletic, and he plays this kind of off-ball hybrid edge rusher role. I'm not sure what he'll play at the next level. For me, I think he should play more off-ball while also blitzing from the off-ball position a lot. But yeah, he's this just chess piece you can move around. Maybe he can come off the edge. Again, play off-ball. He can drop into coverage well. I think Raheem Morris will do a great job utilizing him. And at the end of the day, he's going to bring some pass rush help to a team that desperately needs some pass rush help. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins, who traded back, and they're going to go ahead and take Malaki Starks. He is one of the best players. He's a top 10 player in this draft for me, without a doubt. You might be saying, where's Nicky Manwari? He just had the greatest combine ever. He did. He just had a fantastic one. But if you're looking at the tape, Starks is, I think, by far the better player. I think it's night and day. Starks' tape is just so good all around. Starks can play from the slot. He can play free safety. He can play the high safety. He can play strong, whatever. He can play anywhere. If you want to talk about a chess piece, Starks is that player, and I think he'd be a great fit in this defense as that, like, Brian Branch, Kyle Hamilton, do-it-all safety. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm set on them drafting a defensive player, as everybody should be, and I think they should draft a defensive tackle. And the one that makes sense to me is Kenneth Grant. I like Walter Nolen too, but I like Kenneth Grant even more. This guy is going to be an unbelievable nose tackle. Again, A-plus run defender out the gate with a ton of pass rushing upside. He has the athleticism to be that kind of... It's hard to compare him to a guy like, who's on the Giants? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now. Dexter Lawrence. It's hard to compare a player to Dexter Lawrence, who I think can be in any year in conversation for the best defensive player in football. But that's the kind of athleticism and juice that Kenneth Grant is going to bring you with that size, and it's juice that is desperately needed on this Bengals defense. Then we get to the Seahawks. Won't stay on this one too long because I'm going to be making the exact same pick I made last time, that being Jihaad Campbell. I think this guy can be a Fred Warner best off-ball linebacker in the league player while also bringing some pass rushing upside as an edge rusher. He's one, again, I've said it many, many a times. He's one of my favorite players in this draft, and this Mike Macdonald scheme, when it has that elite linebacker, takes a whole nother leap into the stratosphere. I love this fit. If he's here, I can't imagine Macdonald would pass up on this. Then we get to the Bucs, and they're feeling like, hey, we can afford the trade back. We've got some teams that are looking to draft some offensive pieces more than defensive, which I think the Tampa Bay Bucs want to do. And the PFF brought it up for me. I think the Los Angeles Chargers, again, we're not going to do the trades like the package would be, right? We're just going to force the trade. Boom. Chargers trade up. They leapfrog the Broncos and take my top tight end in this draft, Colston Loveland. Michigan guy, played under Harbaugh, and it's an offense that loves their tight ends. And Colston Loveland, I think he is, I'm not saying he's Brock Bowers. Nobody's Brock Bowers. He's a special unicorn of a player. However, that's not to say that he's not Brock Bowers-esque. He has that sort of great route running and after catch ability for a guy his size. He can take a top off the defense. He understands how to utilize leverage in his routes. Fantastic hands. He would be a weapon in this Chargers offense. I think he'd be a 1,000-yard tight end year one, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think he'd be one of the better tight ends in football in this offense. Then we get to the Broncos, and they wanted Colston Loveland. This stings pretty bad, right? But they get a nice consolation prize in selecting Ashton Jeanty. I think if Ashton Jeanty is here and Colston Loveland is off the board, there's no way the Broncos don't take him. Sean Payton wants to run the ball. Sean Payton wants a do-it-all running back, and there isn't a better running back in this draft than Jeanty. You could take the pressure off of Bo Nix not having to pass so much. There were times where the Broncos offense really struggled to run the ball this year despite having a good defensive line. Ashton Jeanty will change that. You won't have any troubles running the ball behind that line with him back there. Then we get to the Steelers, and I'm of the opinion that they should draft a receiver and somebody who actually didn't make the first round of my last mock draft. I just didn't think it was going to happen, but I've changed my mind. I've gone back and watched the tape. Luther Burden's a stud, and I think he'd be a great complement to what you're getting with George Pickens. George Pickens being that down the field contested catch threat, with Luther Burden being much more of get it to him quickly, run after catch threat, while still having the ball skills to be a threat down the field. Adding another receiver into this room will help whoever is playing quarterback for the Steelers team. I'm not sure who that's going to be, but regardless, should be a big help. Then we finally get to the Bucs, who traded away their pick, and what I love here is getting a steal in Mike Green. I think Mike Green is a better player than the 22nd overall pick, but there's a lot of talent in this draft, especially at the top. I could see him falling, especially because there's just really big and athletic pass rushers in this draft. Think Mykel Williams. Think Shamar Stewart, right? Mike Green is on the smaller side, but even so, super athletic edge rusher. Just an insane get off the ball. Great use of his hands. Twitchy player. And I think that the Bucs could use a true twitchy pass rusher off the edge, especially when you've got a guy like Kalijah Cansey rushing from the inside. You've got Vita Vea taking up all that space. Mike Green being on the smaller side shouldn't matter all that much. So I love this fit here. Then we get to the Packers. And we're going to take who I think, this is my hot take, I think Matthew Golden is the best receiver in this draft outside of Travis Hunter, right? I think he's the best receiver in this draft outside of Travis Hunter. I like him better than I like him better than Burden. The tape is awesome when it comes to Golden. Great nuanced route runner, can take a top off the defense. I think he's got fantastic hands. And then he just went out and ran a 4.29 40-yard dash at his size, at his product. I love Matthew Golden. The Packers are in need of that true number one receiver. I think Matthew Golden can be that guy. Now, moving on to the Vikings. I like the idea of them going on the interior here because their interior depth, it just isn't very good. Even like you got on their depth chart, Jerry Tillery is one of the starting defensive tackles. We can't do that, okay? Walter Nolen can play above Jerry Tillery, and we feel very good about that. Nolen's a great player. Disruptor is the word I would use for him. Going to be a great run defender and a guy with a ton of pass rush upside. I think he's a dude that Brian Flores will love. Coming down to the Texans. They're also a team that I considered taking defensive linemen here, specifically on the interior, because it's not a very strong group. But a group that's even weaker for this team is the interior offensive line. And somebody who I don't think is getting anywhere near enough love right now is North Dakota State's Grey Zabel. Yes, he's listed as a tackle, but like Campbell, measured in with 32-inch arms, you just can't play tackle at the next level like that. Zabel, however, through the Senior Bowl, through the Combine, I think he is the top interior offensive line prospect. Now, I know I drafted a guy like, Kelvin Banks earlier, and Will Campbell, and yeah, they can also play tackle, though. Like, Campbell's probably going to get his shot at tackle in the NFL. Zabel's not. Zabel is purely an interior offensive line prospect, and I think he's a fantastic one at that. The Texans desperately need to protect C.J. Stroud. That offensive line was awful last year. Grey Zabel is going to help tremendously. Then we get to the Rams. And the Rams are in need of a secondary piece. I think they know they want to draft a young, talented corner and fuse that secondary, but they also know they can wait on that. So they're going to look to trade. And a team who's in desperate need of some tackle talent, again, remember, no trade scenarios. I don't have them in my head. Just imagine them. Think of something that'll work. I just don't do them during one-round mock drafts because you don't ever see the other picks. So force the trade. Boom. Kansas City Chiefs jump up. I'd imagine they'd trade a decent amount to do this as well, leapfrogging a team like the Ravens, like the Commanders, who could be looking for some tackle help. And they take the top tackle in the draft for me, which is Josh Simmons. The only reason Simmons drops this far is because he had that really bad injury. And it is a bad injury. It has to do with his patellar tendon, I believe. It's a knee injury. That's not what you love to see out of a young offensive lineman. But man, tape-wise, I'd take him at 4 if I was the Patriots if there was no injury to be concerned about. If he can stay healthy, he makes this Chiefs team so much better and will solve that left tackle issue for them so quickly. Then we get to the Ravens. And as I've said with the Ravens team before, I think this edge group unit is just weak sauce. Just weak sauce, man. And I know a lot of people will say James Pierce. I don't think so. I think James Pierce is not... I don't think James Pierce is going to be a first-round pick. I think he'll be a mid-second guy, and that's because he's so quick off the ball, so athletic. Ran a 4.47, I believe, or something like that. That doesn't change the fact that he plays with next to no power. He's got to hit an NFL weight room. Despite being so fast, he doesn't have a ton of bend and isn't that great with his hands. He depends on that get off and that speed, which can all be developed, right? But he's much more of a project than a lot of people let on. You know who's not? Donovan Jackson. I love Donovan Jackson. He's one of my guys in this draft. Has had a great combine. He had a great Senior Bowl. He comes in as the most refined pass rusher in this entire draft, in my opinion. He's got the deepest bag by a lot. Spin moves, ghost moves, cross chops, anything in the book. And he does that all while having 34-inch arms. He's got enough size and power to defend the run and power rush when he needs to. Much more of a finesse guy, but I think he brings some juice to an edge group in Baltimore that desperately needs it. Then we get to the Lions. And I do really love this fit of Donovan Jackson coming to play guard for this Lions team. I know he's listed as a tackle, but we got to remember he played tackle because Josh Simmons ended up going down with an injury. He was playing guard beforehand, and he was a really damn good guard at that. He has that. I think that versatility will be favored by Dan Campbell and this Lions coaching staff. And not only that, he's a mauler in the run game. He's a hard worker. He's that kind of Dan Campbell mentality that you want at offensive linemen. They want to fill that right guard spot. Donovan Jackson's going to do that. Then we get to the Commanders, and I made this pick in the last draft, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, I might have picked the receiver. I don't entirely remember, but Josh Conerly is going to be the pick here. Josh Conerly tested as a first-round pick. The films as a first-round pick. I just can't imagine him making him out of the first round. And whether he plays at right tackle or he plays at left tackle, filling in for either Wiley or... Oh, no, it'd be at right tackle because the young guy they drafted, Brandon Coleman, he did a really nice job coming in and playing left tackle for that team. So Conerly would come in and get Wiley's spot at right tackle, which is a good thing. I don't think Andrew Wiley's that good of a player. He's very much Jaden Daniels made him and some of those offensive linemen look a bit better than they actually were. But Conerly won't need that. Conerly won't need that. Go protect your young quarterback in Jaden Daniels with a guy like Conerly. Then we get to the Bills, and I'm sorry, Bills fans, I've made the same boring pick the last draft, but it just makes a lot of sense to go get Derrick Harmon. I think you need a young, big defensive tackle that can eat up the run while also being a great pass rusher, and Derrick Harmon is that guy. Without a doubt, a first-round pick, tested greatly at the combine. It might get boring having the same pick over and over again, but it's a pick you're going to love. You will never be bored with Derrick Harmon on your team. Then we finally get to the Rams, who again traded out of that pick, and I don't know why I clicked on wide receiver. They want to go corner here. And for me, I really like Trey Amos. I probably like Trey Amos more than Maxwell Hairston, but Maxwell Hairston just had a fantastic combine, and I also think he could be a pretty damn good scheme fit for this Rams team. So I'm going to pick Maxwell Hairston running I believe it was a 4.28 or 4.29 40-yard dash. Speedy guy, can make a play on the ball. I love him. Then we finally get to the Eagles, and it's always so tough picking for this team because they have no needs. There's not like anywhere I can look at and be like, yeah, we got a draft for this. So I think they're just going to do what they usually do, and that's draft a really young, athletic, talented offensive or defensive lineman. And at some point, Lane Johnson's going to retire. Why not go get somebody who might be able to be the guy who replaces him, that might be able to learn from Lane Johnson, go to Stoutland University. And that guy to me is Aireontae Ersery, the tackle out of Minnesota, measures in at 6'6", 330 pounds, tested super well. He's just, unfortunately, a really raw football player. But when you have Stoutland University and Lane Johnson to learn from, it shouldn't matter all that much, right? That he could develop into this future right tackle for the Eagles. But here we go. That was Mock Draft 2.0. We had some fun. The Combine really puts in perspective what a lot of teams think about these players and really puts into perspective just how good of an athlete that some players are. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Doing that stuff lets me know that, hey, you guys like this content. I should keep putting out more mock drafts, right? But either way, thank you all so much for tuning in. There will be another mock draft this week, actually, but it won't be like a mock draft 3.0 or anything like that. I'm going to be attempting to do a joint mock draft with another creator who I'm very excited to show you guys. So if you're interested in that, again, subscribe, keep checking out the channel. Thank you all for watching. See you later.